Hi, thanks for joining us today. We're going to talk a little bit about the resident assistant position here at Northwestern and the application process for the 2018-2019 school year. My name is Duranius Young, and I am a residence director over on the north side of campus overseeing elder residential community.
Hi everyone, my name is Michelle Hunter and I'm a residence director for 560 Lincoln in Kemper Halls.
So today, during our time together, we'll talk about the RA job. We'll talk about the office in which resident assistants work. We'll also talk about some of the general responsibilities of being an RA, as well as the qualifications and some of the compensation pieces. We'll also talk about some very important dates that it's good to know as soon as you start the application process, as well as how financial aid could potentially impact your ability to be an RA. And then lastly, we'll talk about the interview process and what you need to know for interview days. So within the Office of Residential or the Department of Residential Services, there are 5 different offices that come together to accomplish the Northwestern residential experience. And RAs, or resident assistants as we call them, are within the Department of Residential Life, as you can see in the center. And so residential life is responsible for the overall development and management of community. We also have the Office of Residential Academic Initiatives, and that office is responsible for our residential college experience, as well as working with all of our faculty who are part of our communities. We also have the Office of Budget and Finance, and they're responsible for the fiscal management of the department. Then we have facilities and construction, and anytime you think about submitting a school dude or needing your room to be painted, that's the team that helps you with that. And lastly, we have the Office of Administrative Services. And so these people manage the 24-hour desks, they make sure that you get your mail on time, and those are some of the processes that come out of that office. And again, we all work together to accomplish the residential experience of Northwestern.
So speaking of the Northwestern residential experience, there's a lot of different moving pieces that go into living on campus. So this is just kind of a snapshot of what we offer currently at Northwestern. So we've got 4 residential communities, we have traditional residence halls, we have residential colleges. So these are all places where you, being a resident assistant, you could potentially work. So we've got various spaces on campus, on North Campus and South Campus, small buildings, large buildings. There's all sorts of different places that our resident assistants are working. We've got 4 24-hour neighborhood desks that we have, so RAs are sometimes working in those spaces, and our students are going there all the time to get lockouts or get questions answered, so they're a really great resource for our students that RAs would also utilize. Next up, this is a few more pieces about living on campus. We've got 4 dining halls. Retail dining options, we've got C-stores, you've got Lisa's. Those are all really great places for students to get food late at night. Free printing stations are always really helpful when you're running to class. So it's just kind of good information to know about our residence halls when you're applying to work in these kind of spaces. Next up, resident assistants. If you were to become a resident assistant, you'd be one of 105 RAs, which are incredibly important to all the work that we do with our Northwestern students. So we've got 105, and then we've got 8 professional live-in staff members. So that's what D and I are. We're residence directors. And then we have 5 people that are on our leadership team who kind of oversee the residence directors and then thus the RAs. Then we also have programming boards. We have 9 of those. And then RAs would also work pretty closely with our programming boards, with our student leaders to put on programs in our residence hall. So that's always a really great opportunity for volunteer student leaders and then the RAs to work together.
So what does an RA do? Some of the primary responsibilities of an RA are to facilitate transition of residential students to Northwestern. So thinking back to when students enter Northwestern for the first time and just needing a friendly face who's helpful and just knowledgeable of the campus, that's definitely a primary role of being an RA. Also provide caring support and encouragement, like I just mentioned before. Friendly, mature, responsible people. It's always better to work with people who are excited and pleasant to work with. So looking for people who are positive and high-spirited is also something that makes a good RA. Working with all residential services staff. So thinking about the 5 offices that make up our department, where does the RA fit into that position, and how do the RAs work with all of those different people to accomplish our residential experience? One of my favorite parts of being an RA is program and event planning. So thinking about inviting in a professor to talk about a current issue or having a crafts night, those are some of the things that RAs are able to do within our halls as well. And finally, but most importantly, is to provide safety and security to residents. So we'll talk about the duty rotation a little bit later, but RAs are also responsible for making sure that our communities are safe and secure. Other responsibilities include building community, which is a very important one for our staff members. So we want students to feel a place of belonging and like they are connected to other people, and our RAs are definitely instrumental in doing that. They also are great communicators, so being able to communicate across lines with residents, supervisors, and peers, and our campus constituents. RAs, again, plan and implement programs. So I think of that as an opportunity for students to be creative and to think about things that they would like to see in the community and bring those in and have ownership in that way. Support our departmental initiatives, so working with our faculty, that's one example. So having that relationship. And then finally, as I mentioned, for safety and security, serving on our duty rotation. And RAs are on duty once or twice a week, depending on the community, from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. on the weekdays, and there's a Saturday, Sunday rotation of 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Also being available for emergencies, so that's why we have that duty rotation. Attending departmental trainings and all staff meetings. So the RA job is one that we think is extremely important, and so we put a lot of time and energy into training our staff members, and so we'll talk about that 2-week-long process a little bit later, but training is important, and also working during our hall's opening and closing. So our RAs are typically here a little bit earlier than our residential students, and they also tend to leave a little bit later because we do need to make sure that our halls are closed and safe before students can leave for the holidays or for any winter recess.
Okay, so next up, what are we talking about when you're applying to be an RA? What are some of our minimum qualifications? So these are the bare minimum of what we want you to meet if you're going to be applying for our process. So the first thing is that you must be a full-time undergraduate degree-seeking student that's enrolled in courses. That's really important. The next requirement that we have is that you must have 1 year of experience living on campus or a similar experience, and that could be explained during your application process if it's not specifically living on Northwestern's campus. Next up is that we have a minimum quarterly and cumulative GPA of a 2.5 or above. It's really important that you're a student first and then being in this position, so we want to make sure that you have the foundation of being able to do really well in your classes before you take on this position. So that's where that minimum GPA falls in. And then the next piece is that you should be in good academic standing, so not on probation. If you've been through the conduct process whatsoever, there is a place on your application to explain what that looked like, what the outcome was. And so if you've ever had any part with the conduct process, don't fear, you can still apply for the position. Just make sure that you explain that on your application. Okay, so talk about some of our compensation with the position. So it's a really awesome position, a way to make friends. You get a lot of leadership skills, a lot of event planning, those kind of things. But what else is the compensation for this RA position? So the first thing is a single room. Who doesn't want a single room on Northwestern's campus? So that's really awesome. The next thing is that there's a meal plan. So this is really helpful so you can go to meals in the dining hall with your residents. You can go with your supervisors. You can go with your fellow RAs. So that's another great part of the position. And then typically there's a stipend. It's being looked at for the 2018-2019 year, but that will be figured out by the time that we do make offers, so you would know. In the past, this has been the stipend, but just be on the lookout for us making those final decisions for that. Other things for being an RA, I kind of mentioned that, but we've got a lot of leadership training. There's multiple trainings throughout the quarter. There's August and /September training. We've got some winter training, ongoing development. You're able to become a mentor to fellow students across campus, even to your fellow peers as RAs. You're going to meet a lot of people that you didn't think that you would meet before. You're going to get a lot of practice with time management, being an RA, planning your programs. You're going to be making sure that your duty schedule works, working at the desk, all these different pieces. You're going to get really good at time management. Event planning, like we've mentioned continuously. Communication is always a really big piece that students don't always think about. You're going to be answering phone calls, sending emails. You're going to be talking with your supervisor, talking with peers, handling roommate conflicts. All of that is really good communication skills that you're not going to get if you're not an RA. And then how to support and refer others. Being familiar with Northwestern's resources is really great for yourself, but then you can also share it with your friends and with your residents. So knowing about the campus and being able to be a really supportive person is a really great part of the job. And then transferable skills, being safety and security, handling and responding to incidents. If there's anything going on, I don't know how many times I've talked in an interview about I've handled an emergency on campus and what that looked like, and not a lot of students can say that. So we're not hoping that there's emergencies, but you're trained and prepared for those kind of situations, and that's going to be really helpful when you go to apply to any job that beyond this point.
So, some mandatory dates that you need to know when starting the application process. The employment period is for one full academic year, and that starts on September 2nd, 2018 through June 24th, 2019. So, that's from the start of opening that year all the way through graduation, just so you're aware. We have a 2-week training period that starts September 2nd through September 16th. And if you have things that may interfere with that, as thinking about internship experiences, please reach out to our department so we can talk about that and let you know our options. But we do typically expect all of our RAs to be a part of training for the entire time. Our halls open and close. Opening is August 31st, so all of our staff work that day, welcoming in our new students into the communities. And by September 2nd at 6 p.m., all of our staff members need to be present and on campus because that's when we start that training period.
Okay, so another important piece of being an RA is that it may affect your financial aid, and so we encourage all of our applicants to go over here to Hinman and speak with the financial aid office to kind of look at how that might affect your financial aid package. So we don't want anything to be a surprise to you. We just really want to make sure that you have as much information as possible to make an informed decision about your upcoming year at Northwestern and how that might affect you being an RA or not.
All right, so let's talk about the application. What information will we collect from the application? So it's pretty standard and it's pretty straightforward. We'll ask about your personal information, so things like your name, where do you currently live on campus. We'll talk about previous employment experience. And with that one, we are very much aware that a lot of people applying for the RA position have never had a job before, and that's completely fine. So if you've never had a job before and you want to be an RA, still apply and start thinking about some of those leadership and volunteer experiences that you've had either in high school and or during your college time. So don't let not having a job before deter you from applying. We also ask about your community preferences. So thinking about where you want to work or where do you see yourself being an RA. Ultimately, we hire for the community needs. So we place RAs based on their skill sets and what we need within our communities. But we do offer up an opportunity to list preferences in the application. There are only 4 questions to the application, and they're essay style, talking about your time at Northwestern and some of the qualities that you want to bring to the role. And then last, we do ask for references, one being a reference from any RA on campus. So that's a part of the application. And then if you look down at the screen, there's the pathway to the application if you need it. You can also access the application by visiting our website.
Okay, so what's the next step in the process after you put in your application? So those will all be reviewed, and then based on those, students will be invited to do interviews. If you're invited to do an interview, then you'll also be invited to do an RA interview skills workshop, which is a really great opportunity for you to get information about what goes into an interview. How do you need to prepare yourself? How do you need to dress? What kind of questions do you need to ask? What questions are going to be asked to you? So these are kind of some of the things, tips and techniques that you'll be able to take advantage of, an overview of the actual interview process, what that's going to look like on your interview day, how many people are you interviewing with, how long, those kind of things are going to be really helpful for you to prepare. Interview ethics, things that people can't ask during an interview, just things to be aware of. And then looking at practice questions, which is always really great to kind of know maybe what questions you might get asked during an interview, so you can kind of be thinking of your answer ahead of time. Like, feels like it's cheating, but it's not. It's totally being prepared. One really great thing to keep in mind is that we offer these up to our students over the past few years, and we actually have a 100% placement rate of students that go through the RA interview skills workshop. They get jobs. They become RAs. So if you are invited to an interview and you're invited to an RA interview skills workshop, definitely take advantage of it because it's going to be a really good chance that you might become an RA too. So we talked about the RA interview skills workshop, which would prepare you for the interviews. So this is kind of an interview logistics. So there's going to be a formal interview. So you're going to be sitting down, being asked questions about the position, about your experiences, why you think that you would be a good fit for us. Then we're going to have some sort of activity, and then also have a case study. So these might be things of like, how are you working in a group? If you happen upon a situation with students, how would you respond to that situation? So it's really like making you think about what would you do if you become an RA? What are you going to do in that situation? So that's really what we're getting at to kind of test your skills in that part of the interview. We actually have multiple days that we're doing interviews. So Thursday, February 15th, Friday, February 16th, and then also Saturday, February 17th. The times are to be determined, but definitely keep those days in your calendar. All of our students are going to be expected to attend one of those interview time slots, so just keep that in mind when you're applying for our process. Okay, so we want to make sure that all of our students that have tuned in online to watch Duranius and I go through this are getting credit for having attended attended an information session. So it's really important for you to type in this bit link. It's case sensitive. Go there and you'll fill out the Google form about this. The whole session that Duranius and I just did to make sure that you've gotten the information that you need to be a successful RA candidate.
So here are a few reminders about the application process if you did not remember anything we just talked about. Our applications are due January 22nd by 11:59 p.m. And if you go to our website, which is listed below, you can also access the application. Very, very important, RA training starts September 2nd, 2018. And staff are not permitted to participate in any other activities during training. Remember, that's a very, very important time that we prepare you for the role, and we would really like no other distractions. So when you come to campus on September 2nd, your primary objective will to be a part of our training experience. And if you need any housing accommodations at all, please contact Accessible NU and they'll be able to make those accommodations.
Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to us. If you have any questions, we've got further along the email address for selection. You can send us your questions. Reach out to your residence director, reach out to one of your RAs. We're just really excited for you to apply to be an RA for this year.
Thank you, and we can't wait to see your application.